Married with Children was a wildly popular sitcom, equally known for its lowbrow and crass humor as it was for pushing the boundaries of what was acceptable to show on TV. This Fox show about the middle-class Bundy family showed perhaps a slice of life that was less cookie-cutter and proper than most other sitcoms. While most shows were able to create comedy by often showing the flaws of their characters and using those flaws to propel the story, Married with Children was different. It basked in the characters being quite flawed in some over-the-top yet accessible ways. They were a family that might even feel like your neighbors, your relatives, or your own family. And so, despite being more crass and lowbrow than other family-oriented sitcoms, Married with Children struck a chord with people all over. At the same time, there were, as usual, many people who failed to see the appeal of its rude and in-your-face style of humor. In this video, we're talking about the protests put up against some of the more wild and crazy elements of the show, and about the fact that most of these public protests mostly served to make the show more popular. Although one did manage to get an episode put on the shelf, at least for a while. So join Facts First as we present the controversial episode that took Married with Children off the air. Terry Rakolta's Revolt. Terry Rakolta was a mother who, on January 15, 1989, decided to watch an episode of Married with Children with her kids. The episode on that evening was called Her Cups Runneth Over, and it was in the third season of the show. So that means while the tone and nature of the show had been pretty firmly established by then, Rakolta was still unaware of it. She was immediately shocked and offended by the episode, and after sending her kids out of the room 5 minutes in, she watched the rest on her own. She then compiled a laundry list of things she felt were offensive about the episode. These included things like an old man who wears a garter and stockings, a character, Steve, getting an implied erection while watching an adult movie, and when a character reveals her bare breasts to Al Bundy, though the nudity was implied, not real. She also took offense at a gay man with a tiara on, as well as a male stripper dancing in a G-string. Rakolta sprang into action the next day, starting with a letter-writing campaign to the show's sponsors. She wrote directly to the CEOs of 20 advertisers, not only threatening to boycott their business, but also accusing them of, quote, pandering to and supporting soft pornography. She made sure to keep watching the show for several weeks, continuing to compile a list of what she found offensive. The response. Rakolta also tried in vain to reach the Fox complaint department. The reason she had trouble reaching them was because it didn't yet exist. Fox was such a new network, it didn't yet have the extensive infrastructure other major networks had. Instead, she ended up speaking directly to Marcy Vosburgh, who wrote the episode. Marcy tried to assure Rakolta that they were intentionally pushing the envelope and trying something new, and that even her own mother didn't like the show. But she said they were operating on the premise that it wasn't required viewing, so anyone like Rakolta or Vosburgh's mom who found it offensive had the right to change the channel and watch something else. This logic didn't resonate with Rakolta. She upped her letter-writing campaign to the sponsors of the show, threatening a boycott on their products. On the surface, it seems quite unlikely that one person boycotting a product would have any influence on that company or on Fox's opinion about their product. And yet, sponsors caved almost immediately to the whims of this one viewer. It somehow didn't matter to them that millions of people adored the show. They, for some reason, felt the need to bend to Rakolta's demands. So many of the advertisers decided to withdraw from their campaigns. This included major corporations like Coca-Cola, Mitsubishi Motors, Johnson & Johnson, and McDonald's. These companies also decided to make changes in their screening processes for potential advertising buys so that future shows wouldn't bring them negative publicity. And they preemptively pulled their ad buys from future episodes of Married with Children as well. McDonald's put out a statement saying they had a family-friendly image that the show didn't fit with. Procter & Gamble even name-checked Rakolta, putting out a statement that said they shared, quote, Miss Rakolta's interests in quality television programming. And the president of Coca-Cola even sent Rakolta a personal apology for being a part of funding an unsuitable episode of the show. Rakolta, in turn, gained some fame and notoriety from the incident, appearing on shows like Nightline and being featured on the front page of the New York Times. The results. Considering Married with Children ran for 11 seasons, it seems obvious that Rakolta's campaign against the show was ultimately not very successful. But at the same time, it did manage to make some waves in the immediate future. Fox felt the pressure from their advertisers, so they decided to move the show's time slot to 30 minutes later than it had been airing. so it went from 8:30 to 9 p.m. when theoretically it would be seen mostly by adults. They also agreed to tone the raunch level down in upcoming seasons. There was less implied nudity as well as general sexual content in the immediate term. At the same time, Fox tried to have it both ways by putting out statements supporting the show. However, they apparently didn't pass on fan mail to the show, and they gave in to the demands that it be less raunchy. So the show's creatives felt stifled by not being able to continue pitching and writing episodes that were in line with what had made the show a hit in the first place. The entire fourth season was considered, especially by the creatives involved, as being the most toned down of the 11 seasons. Co-creator Michael Moy talked about how he pitched an episode for that season where Al gets a circumcision. It was rejected by the network. However, it ended up being used later on in the 8th season. By that point, the controversy had died down and people were more used to seeing the sexy and raunchy humor of the show. And at the same time, Jamie Kellner, then president of the network, claimed that toning things down in season 4 was less about the Rakolta boycott and the advertisers and more about Fox feeling that the writers had been pushing things a little too far in season 3. He even stated that Rakolta had no right to impose her views on what people should be able to watch on television. The Rakolta boycott may have resulted in some short-term changes in advertising and content, but ultimately it backfired. After a year, all the advertisers had returned because the publicity from the incident had made the show even more popular. Fox was now getting bombarded by new advertisers as well, looking to cash in on the show's popularity. The ratings were higher than ever at that point, thanks to the Rakolta Revolt. I'll see you in court. However, the most direct and notable effect of the Rakolta campaign was that Fox decided to shelve an upcoming episode called I'll See You in Court. In the episode, Al and Peg Bundy book a hotel room for the two of them to enjoy a romantic excursion. Their hotel choice is a fairly cheap and scuzzy one, which of course leads to the main storyline of the episode. The room has an adult video and a VCR, so they decide to play the tape. To their shock and horror, they realize the couple in the video is actually their friends, Steve and Marcy. Eventually, they deduce that the hotel has been filming couples without their consent when they're alone in the rooms. The Bundys, along with Steve and Marcy, file suit against the motel. The motel claims it shouldn't count as being filmed having sex since it only lasts for a number of seconds. The climax, if you will, of the episode is when they try to prove that it was indeed sex by having it again in the courtroom. And of course, they're filmed again because there are cameras in the courtroom. Fox, succumbing to the pressure of Rakolta's campaign and the loss of several advertisers, decided they'd hold off airing the episode. At that point, it became known as the lost episode of Married with Children. Fans of the series wondered for years if it would ever be seen. It finally did air, so to speak, 13 years later. That's when it was included in a DVD box set of the series, although even that version was toned down. Most of the coarse and lewd language was actually edited out of the DVD version. Now it's time to hear from you. Did you know about this incident with Married with Children? Let us know in the comments section below.